Hello and welcome to CYC News for the 19th of July 2020 and the 12th of Abib 1736 AM. I'm Anastasia Hanna. In today's headlines, Trump ends special economic treatment for Hong Kong. UK economy rebounds slower than expected. Apple has €13 billion Irish tax bill overturned. California reimposes sweeping restrictions amid virus spike. Winter wave of coronavirus could be worse than the first. Visa issues may prevent Canadian club finishing 2020 Super League season. But first to the United States, where President Donald Trump has signed an executive order to end preferential economic treatment for Hong Kong, after China enacted a new security law there. According to Mr. Trump, Hong Kong will now be treated the same as mainland China. He also signed a law to impose sanctions on officials who crack down on rights. Speaking in the Rose Garden last Tuesday, Mr. Trump said, "No special privileges, no special economic treatment, and no export of sensitive technologies. This law gives my administration powerful new tools to hold responsible the individuals and the entities involved in extinguishing Hong Kong's freedom." China has strongly criticized the move, vowing to take retaliatory action. The US sees the security law as a threat to the freedoms Hong Kong has enjoyed under the 1984 agreement. China's foreign ministry condemned the latest US move, saying there were a gross interference in its domestic affairs and retaliatory sanctions against the US will be imposed to safeguard China's legitimate interests. A strongly worded statement said, "The US attempt to obstruct the implementation of the national security law for Hong Kong will never succeed. We urge the US side to correct its mistakes, refrain from implementing the act, and stop interfering in China's internal affairs in any way. China will firmly respond if the US goes ahead." Over to the UK now, where the economy has rebounded more slowly than expected, growing just 1.8% from the previous month, as the gradual casing of lockdown had a modest impact. Manufacturing and house building showed signs of recovery in May, as some firms saw staff return to work. But the Office for National Statistics said the economy was in the doldrums. As a result of big contractions in previous months, the UK economy is now 24.5% smaller than it was in February. Jonathan Athau, Deputy National Statistician for Economic Statistics at the ONS, said the economy was still a quarter smaller in May than in February, before the full effects of the pandemic struck. In the important services sector, we saw some pickup in retail, which saw record online sales. However, with lockdown restrictions remaining in place, many other services remained in the doldrums, with a number of areas seeing further declines. The return to the economic growth in May was described as disappointing by economists, who had expected an expansion of 5% or more. The increase came after a fall of 6.9% in March and a record 20.4% decline in April. In the 3 months to May, the economy shrank by 19.1%, compared with the previous 3-month period. Apple has been told it will not have to pay Ireland €13 billion in back taxes after winning an appeal at the European Union's second highest court. It follows a record ruling by the European Commission against the US tech giant in 2016. The EU's General Court said it had annulled that decision because the Commission had not proven Apple had broken competition rules. In a statement, Apple said this case was not about how much tax we pay, but where we are required to pay it. We're proud to be the largest taxpayer in the world, as we know the important role tax payments play in society. The European Commission brought the action after claiming the Irish government had allowed Apple to attribute nearly all its EU earnings to an Irish head office that existed only on paper. It claimed this had allowed the tech giant to avoid paying €13 billion of tax on EU revenues and given it an unfair advantage over competitors based in Ireland. However, the Irish government argued that Apple should not have to repay the taxes, deeming its loss was worth it to make the country an attractive home for large companies. Ireland, which has one of the lowest corporate tax rates in the EU, is Apple's base for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. The US state of California has reimposed restrictions on businesses and public spaces amid a spike of coronavirus infections in America's most populous state. On Monday, Governor Gavin Newsom ordered an immediate halt to all indoor activities at restaurants, bars, entertainment venues, zoos, and museums. He said the virus is not going away anytime soon. I hope all of us recognize that if we were still connected to some notion that somehow when it gets warm it's going to go away, or somehow it's going to take summer months or weekends off, this virus has done neither. In the worst affected countries of the southwestern US state, churches, gyms, and hairdressers also closed. California has more than 330,000 COVID-19 cases with more than 7,000 deaths. The reimposition of the restrictions in the state of nearly 40 million people was prompted by a 20% rise in people testing positive in the past 2 weeks, and increasing numbers of Californians now need intensive care. Infections have also risen rapidly in about 40 of America's 50 states over the last 2 weeks. Along with California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas have emerged as centers of the pandemic. But on the East Coast, New York City, which in April had one of the highest COVID death rates in the world, recorded no new fatalities from the disease for the first time in 4 months. According to Johns Hopkins University, there are currently more than 3.3 million confirmed COVID-19 cases across the country and more than 135,000 deaths. To Health News, and scientists say the UK could see about 120,000 new coronavirus deaths in a second wave of infections this winter. Asked to model a reasonable worst-case scenario, they suggested a range between 24,500 and 251,000 of virus-related deaths in hospitals alone, peaking in January and February. To date, there have been over 44,800 official deaths in the UK. The estimate does not take into account any lockdowns, treatments, or vaccines. Professor Stephen Holgate, a respiratory specialist from University Hospital Southampton, NHS Trust, who chaired the report, said, "This is not a prediction, but it is a possibility. The modelling suggests that deaths could be higher with a new wave of COVID-19 this winter, but the risk of this happening could be reduced if we take action immediately." The report stresses there is still a high degree of uncertainty over how the coronavirus pandemic will play out this winter. But research suggests the virus can survive longer in colder conditions and is more likely to spread when people spend more time indoors. The health service is already severely disrupted in the aftermath of the first pandemic wave, with a waiting list that could stand at 10 million by the end of this year. Currently, coronavirus deaths and cases in the UK are down, which gives the nation a chance to reflect and plan for a second wave. And in sport, Toronto Wolfpack could be forced to pull out of this season's Super League campaign when it resumes in August because of visa issues could rob them of up to 7 players, including multi-million-pound signing Sonny Bill Williams. Wolfpack representatives took part in a meeting of clubs early last week and were unable to guarantee being able to compete fixtures in 2020. Toronto owner David Argyle said, "We have laid this out to Super League and the Rugby Football League, and it's an issue that we can't keep kicking down the road. It's been suggested to us that we could loan young players from other clubs, but we're not here to make up numbers, and we never have been." The club says visas for 7 overseas players from Australia and New Zealand only allow them to stay in England for a maximum of 6 months. That time limit has been exceeded because they have been forced to remain there during lockdown, and they will now have to return home. The RFL said, we have been working closely with the relevant authorities to help Toronto Wolfpack with the issues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically their inability to play home fixtures in Canada, and the resulting need for their overseas players to stay in England for several more months. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Anastasia Hanna from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. See you next time.